What do we know so far?
Well, obviously, this has been a saga now. Last week, speculation about a possible debt restructuring sent its overseas bonds down to record lows. There was a lot of uncertainty about what was going to happen with this company, and that saw the bonds over the last week kind of whipsaw, obviously. Could there be a market contagion was a big concern, and led many to question whether there were indeed those long-standing implicit government guarantees in place. So what this report, coming from sources close to the situation, would likely, mark a significant show of government support, and that could make foreign bondholders breathe a little bit easier after a very tumultuous week. Here's what we do know. People familiar with the situation saying China is considering a plan that would see the PBOC, the central bank, assume more than 100 billion yuan, that's 15 billion US dollars, of assets from China's Huarong Asset Management. Of course, Bloomberg News reported last week, I believe it was a few days ago, that Huarong was considering a restructuring plan to offload some of its non-performing or unprofitable and also non-core units. This plan by the PBOC, if it does come to fruition, it is still, of course, being discussed. Reportedly, is to clean up the balance sheet of Huarong and refocus its core business on managing distressed debt. Of course, the CBIRC, which is the Banking and Insurance Regulatory Commission, last week said Huarong was operating normally and had ample liquidity. But generally, authorities have kind of been a little bit quiet over whether the government would step in with financial support. So right now, the story is, according to sources, that the PBOC is considering offering some sort of bailout, if you want to call it that.
And Steve, the government has been pretty quiet on whether it will step in with financial support for Huarong. Why the proposed bailout then?
Well, look at the numbers, Heidi. They kind of tell the story of Huarong, right? And the situation they're in. 1.6 trillion yuan of liabilities, okay? It has a vast web of connections within the Chinese financial system. Systemically, it's probably the most important companies within the state-owned enterprise financial realm of companies outside of the state-owned banks, okay? Closely watched barometer of the government's willingness, of course, to backstop the debt of SOEs. And of course, it's the big question going forward is, where do the foreign bondholders stand? This is China's #3 financial issuer of international, issuances. So it is closely watched. And foreign bondholders will be watching this news that we have today quite closely after what we've seen in the dollar bonds whipsawing over the last week after this story first emerged.